There's something special about the Star Wars movies that I fear these yearly installments might take away a tad. Even the shit movies were hyped up the arse to the point that it would be almost impossible to avoid that old familiar train of excitement. Those who have an affliction to being disappointed take every year like a product's gonna somehow cheer up or change their miserable existence. I mean, even last year they had the fucking Nelson's column lit up like Padme's luminescent dildo. This time around though, I couldn't even find 16 spoiler comments in an unrelated YouTube video telling me which beloved cast member died. Mainly so, because no character anyone cared about died. Well, I mean, I suppose there was Carrie Fisher, but that might have well have been just fucking DLC. Oh James, that joke was in bad taste, it's only been a couple days. Well, you know what else would taste bad? Her cold, rotting pussy. What the fuck, that's really fucked up. Shit, they're gone. Good. Now that we've got the die-hard Star Wars fans out the room, let's talk about the issue at hand. Rogue One was very mediocre. That's good. Put that one in the title and thumbnail. Star Wars, I've always found, has relied on change to drive success. Well, that and someone holding George Lucas by his big greasy neck flaps. The original Star Wars was about a bunch of nobodies and a young-faced Aryan farm boy fucking up quite a big and quite literally faceless Empire's plans by using crowd-pleasing ships and at the time crowd-pleasing but now questionable incest scenes. And while it could have been quite easy just to repeat the same formula over and over again, the next film decides to actually develop the plot by having the young all-American freedom fighters we rooted for last time get quite literally fisted up the arse. But that made a good movie too, because it changed things up a bit. While the expected corporate move would have just been to do the same thing over and over again and somehow expect some different results, or even better results, this one didn't even have a big MacGuffin in, and instead it developed that whole Force thing that everyone made such a fuss about last time, and it had its first big ground battle. By the time the third one knocked around, George's keeper was asleep, and taking that opportunity, the Goliath decided to dress up Leia as one of his fantasy slut queens. And in recompense to that, he promised her that he'd put her in one of his favourite drugged-up fantasies involving horny little bear men. It was less good, but still interesting because it wasn't just content to bask in the presence of the last two successful movies, and redeemed one big baddie while taking down another. It's a nice little story about redemption that wraps itself up quite nicely, and I like it. And ignoring the brief period when George Lucas was allowed to fucking piss all over his franchise, presumably for a laugh, and the big faceless Disney Corporation had bought one of the largest and most successful properties on the planet, and have to be very careful on how they're going to handle the thing. Because fans of Star Wars have the exact same problem that fans of anything have. They're fans, and fans have one purpose, to keep things exactly the same, and piss and moan if C-3PO has a new arm. Do you see our dilemma? Says one Disney executive to the obese corporate mask that calls itself the CEO. We have 3 shit films, and 3 good films, and everyone loves the 3 good films, and from what we've gathered, everyone hates the 3 shit films because they're kind of different and the characters don't act right. Well, the Blob said in a spittle of tongue that sounded like the cry of a million baby deers, just keep finding ways to remake the good ones over and over again with different titles. And that's what they did. At first they did it with The Force Awakens, and now they're doing it with Rogue One. I think it's kind of telling when you have more reoccurring cameos of previous characters from the other films than your actual film has new characters. I mean, for God's sake, man. They spend the first 10 minutes of the film setting up this new Imperial baddie, showing off how dangerous he is and whatnot, but he ends up getting thrown around by all the other older characters from previous films to the extent that it just makes him unthreatening. Like, why am I supposed to care about this all-new evil Nazi type when you have the guy from the previous movie just take over his role halfway through as the Imperial tosspot for no discernible reason other than, hey, remember me? I'm a cool character that everyone likes and remembers. Yes, movie, I do remember that the other Star Wars films exist. You don't need to bring the characters back from the literal dead just to remind me. And if you're going to bring characters back from the dead with CGI, at least make them look better than they did in the animated Star Wars film. You know, the one with Baby Jabba, and that made Rule 44 an even more uncomfortable website because of it. What I don't understand is that surely if you want to make a film that distinguishes itself from the others, why be so afraid to have characters that are actually new and do something significant? No, please don't let that new character pull the big Death Star kill laser, then we won't be able to jack off our big fat fan boners. I was rolling my eyes at the point when on another planet in a completely different star system to Tatooine, we run into the exact same 2 aliens from the first film. Oh, and of course C-3PO and R2-D2 show up to make their mandatory fucking appearance like the Queen on Christmas Day. What I'm wondering is why stop there? Why it didn't, upon the point that they need smuggled into a shield planet, didn't have Han Solo run up with a big red arrow pointing at him saying, "Recognise me? I can sneak you in there because I'm a smuggler. Yes, this is a Star Wars movie. Do you like Star... I'm from the films." It doesn't help that none of the new characters are actually new characters, and by that I mean they're just old new characters that have been reskinned. The new girl's just Rey with dick-sucking lips, who is also coincidentally Luke, and her sidekick might as well be called Han Sombrero-wearing Solo. Interestingly enough, in place of Chewbacca is a hairy Mongolian, so that says more about the film directors than it does actually me. And then you've got a droid, because it's a Star Wars film, you've got to have a droid. The only original character is the blind Asian guy, and he was given less time than the Han Solo stand-in to live up to his legacy and fall into a bottomless pit. Oh yeah, and everyone dies in this movie. I mean, spoilers, I guess. But the only scene I found any slight emotion in was when it came to the robot. And that emotion was quickly replaced with the thought, blimey, he can take a lot of bullets. Why don't they just put a droid like him on the front lines of the Empire? He's a lot more fucking effective than the Stormtroopers. For real, this droid character has the reaction time of a Korean on Overwatch, and can take as much punishment as my virgin boy ass, that being quite a lot. Or even battle droids, for fuck's sake. I mean, those things were built for the express purpose of combat, and this one tactical droid thing could rip those things apart by the nuts and bolts. It's really quite ironic, actually, that the Star Wars film that came out for the express purpose of experimentation does little of the sort. The whole concept of what this film was the fact it was supposed to take the Rebellion, a previously all-American, all-righteous white team of blue-eyed brave freedom fighters, and turn them into a somewhat more shady organisation, a little bit more realistic, who might kill a couple innocents for the greater plan to take down the Empire. Sacrifices have to be made for the revolution and whatnot. Freedom ain't free, boys. This idea of making the rebels more dark, however, is nothing but superficial. You have a big rebel man, who's supposed to be this radical terrorist type, and the way we know this is because his voice is kind of funny, and the only thing dark and shady about him, to be quite frank, is his skin. To be honest, the whole idea that the rebels would be perceived as somewhat evil is never pushed across, because we're never shown anything that they do that is actually bad. The Spanish guy shoots a fat bloke, but that just makes him seem more of a dick than the Rebellion, because he was never given orders to do so. The black big man uses this mind squid thing on this Imperial pilot at some point, but the whole gravity of that is lost since we never get to see what it does. For all we know, this squid could have just rubbed the pilot in uncomfortable places with its tentacles until it screamed information. I understand the film is supposed to be kid-friendly, but at least have a fade out and a scream. If anything, the squid just looks like a CGI decolorized version of Barney the dinosaur. I'm hardly frightened by the thing. And the whole scene where rebel bombers blow up some innocents make them seem more impotent than overtly bad. After all, the orders weren't, hey, go blow up that nice man, specifically for the laugh, lol. No, the whole reason that we're given to find the Rebellion anything but good, invertly, is the scene where the girl character says, you rebels and Imperials are two sides of the same coin. Well, that's hardly true. The Imperials just nuked a continent, and the only crime the Rebellion seems to have committed is having an argument amongst themselves in a political Senate scene. Actually, maybe you have a point, that sort of thing in these series of movies is equivalent of a court-martial offence. Show don't tell is a phrase that comes to mind. And it's a shame because in the original Star Wars, the whole idea of the Rebellion and the Empire was to mirror them with real-life events. I know specifically the rebels were supposed to represent the Viet Cong, and the Viet Cong used to piss on sticks and impale imperialist, capitalist American pigs with them. I'm not saying you have to go super mature, because God knows that Disney cares more about net gain than story, but at least have the rebels partake in events that are more akin to actual guerrilla warfare, opposed to swarming the beaches on D-Day. And to the movie's credit, they do a very good job at making the Imperials look like dicks. And the Death Star is particularly impressive in scale when you look at the thing. I just can't help but feel if maybe the planets the Empire goes Nagasaki on were given more characterization, the effect would have been better felt. I mean, this perspective switches from planet to planet so often that they have to include title cards just so you can keep track. Oh, we're on this farming planet. Jokes, now we're on this desert one. Oh, did I say desert? I meant urban city. Yavin 4, Camino 2, that lava planet that waited for way too long in the other films. If we keep throwing new locations, you won't notice how shit the characters are. Bloody hell. Slow down, Star Wars. I know that you've got a big universe and all to show off, but it would feel bigger if the planets weren't abandoned after every single scene. Makes me feel uncomfortable, like you're overcompensating for something. I mean, you're Star Wars, man, there's no need to be insecure. People love you, and eventually, if you give them enough time, they'll love anything you do. I'm pretty sure the Christmas special with the Wookiees has its own niche audience that likes it at this stage, and even George Howard the Duck Lucas didn't like that one. I think this film's main problem overall is it's just not content to be itself. A nice self-contained story about new characters and new villains in a greater universe outside of lightsaber bashing and whatnot. It just has to keep referencing the other films and plopping in characters even if they're not needed, and reminding specifically about a scene at the end of the movie when we get a big gawp at CGI Princess Leia, and all I can think of aside from how she looks like a claymation is how much she isn't needed there. She's not needed there. I'm all for revisiting and referencing other movies. And hell, I even like the idea of Darth Vader's new lava castle. But if the point of the movie was to expand its universe, then I find the whole thing of relying on other stories to be counterintuitive. By having C-3PO and his little midget friend appear around every corner in every movie, it just makes the plot unbelievable and the galaxy less meaningful as a whole. You ever hear of small world syndrome? Well, that's the opposite of what you want when you come to create a larger universe. Don't be afraid to be your own thing, Star Wars. Have your own characters and have your own plot. The prequels tried shoving in fan service into every single one of Jar Jar Binks' 17 holes, and look where that got them. A little 6-year-old Darth Vader building a C-3PO complete with artificial intelligence. I see, Annie. Misa thinks your plot is bullshit.